When Emily opened the door to her apartment, she thought they had visitors and immediately looked at her shoes. But there were no intruders, only her husband's sneakers. But someone was working in the kitchen, and the aroma of real home-cooked food was in the air. It wasn't the usual reheated leftovers, something fresh was cooking. To her surprise, her husband, William, was standing at the stove, apron tied on, cooking diligently. Emily even wiped her eyes to make sure she wasn't dreaming. A mixture of disbelief and admiration flashed through her mind. She'd never seen William like this before, and it was almost surreal to see him step out of his comfort zone. 5 years of marriage, and this was the first time she'd seen such a sight. William, who had never cooked anything but tea, was preparing dinner, a gesture he had planned as a surprise in honor of their upcoming 5-year anniversary together. The most he'd ever done was put a tea bag in the boiling pot, and that was rare unless Emily asked him to. As far as she could remember, he'd never made a sandwich on his own. They'd always shared responsibilities. They'd traveled to work together in the mornings, albeit on different buses, and they'd come home at almost the same time in the evenings. Their free time was spent together. Now, watching him in the kitchen, Emily couldn't help but think about how they had been inseparable for 5 years without any major disagreements. The thought of breaking up had never crossed her mind. Their relationship had always been stable. At first it was frustrating for Emily that William couldn't even fry scrambled eggs, but eventually she got over it. She accepted that he could do other things, like make money. "The day is full of surprises," Emily finally said, coming to her senses. William jumped slightly, startled at the sound of her voice, but then smiled warmly when he realized it was her. "Come on, get undressed and wash your hands. Dinner will be ready in 5 minutes," he said as he ushered her out of the kitchen. When dinner was served, he sat down across from her, glowing with pride. Dinner was roast potatoes and meat. Emily was amazed. It wasn't just boiled pasta. It was real food. Even peeling potatoes was a feat for him. She couldn't understand what motivated him to do it. As she began to eat, she realized that the food was delicious. Either from hunger or because William was new to cooking, she praised him for his efforts. The surprise was a success, she said with a smile. William, proud of himself, began to narrate. 5 years together. Such a beautiful milestone, he said. For a moment, Emily's heart sank. She was afraid she had forgotten their wedding anniversary, but quickly remembered that it was 3 months away. "Don't you think it's time to start thinking about children?" William asked unexpectedly. Emily's jaw dropped. She hadn't realized he had thought about it, considering he had always been focused on his career and financial stability. William continued, explaining that he'd thought a lot about their future and how a baby would affect their lives. He acknowledged the difficulties: lack of sleep, constant childcare, but suggested that his mother could help. Emily supported the idea, especially since William mentioned that his mother had already offered to help, expressing concern about their lack of children. However, Emily knew that William's mother lived on the other side of town, and it would be inconvenient for her to visit her on a daily basis. Just as she was about to say it wasn't that big of a deal, William made another suggestion. "What if we bought my mom an apartment nearby? It would make it easier for her to help out that way." Emily nodded, mulling over the idea. "She doesn't want to sell her apartment," William added. "She's lived in it for almost 30 years, and it's sacred to her." This puzzled Emily, as her mother-in-law often complained about the inconvenience of the apartment. But William's suggestion made sense when he said they could sell the apartment Emily had inherited from her grandmother and use the proceeds to buy his mother a place nearby. Emily took a deep breath, trying to figure out how to make sense of it all. Did William really expect her to give up the steady income from her grandmother's apartment just to provide a place for his mother to live? She carefully rephrased the scenario out loud to make sure she got the point. They would give up the steady rental income to finance his mother's new apartment nearby. William confirmed, and Emily smiled. "I have a surprise for you, too," she said. "I just found out today that I'm pregnant." William was stunned. A mixture of shock and joy reflected on his face. Emily explained that what they had mistaken for food poisoning a week ago had likely been the onset of morning sickness. That same day, she confirmed the pregnancy during a visit to the gynecologist. Finally coming to his senses, William grinned, realizing the timing was perfect. However, Emily threw him another surprise. "I agree that it's better to sell this apartment and buy the one nearby," she said, "but I don't agree to register it in your mother's name. When the baby is born, we'll register the apartment in his name and your mother can live there." William lowered his eyes, remembering the way his mother had behaved during the renovation of the house. She had offered to help, but had ended up being overly critical and controlling, constantly questioning their spending. Emily's parents, on the other hand, had been very helpful, even taking on much of the work during their week-long visit. Emily doubted her mother-in-law would be as supportive of the child. "It's a great idea," Emily said, "to get Mom an apartment nearby, but only if she agrees to contribute the rent on her current apartment toward the new one. It would be fair, since we'd be sacrificing our income." William was visibly upset. He had hoped his mother would be able to live there rent-free, but Emily stood her ground. "You've started cooking dinners," she praised him. "That's good, because now I'm going to need help with the food." William called his mother to share the news of Emily's pregnancy. She was thrilled about the baby, but not thrilled about the financial terms Emily had offered. Their conversation ended in frustration, with William feeling caught between his wife's practical approach and his mother's expectations. Despite the tension, Emily was confident that they would work it out. With a baby on the way, they would have new priorities, and hopefully, a fresh perspective.